So I have an update in the nationwide block against the ATF and their pistol brace rule. So let's talk about what's happening in this critical case. Now, really quick before we jump into this video, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Kershaw Knives. Kershaw makes amazing knives. A lot of you guys know that I carry their knife every single day for my ADC. I carry the Kershaw Iridium. I love their knives. They're very affordable. They're just quality knives. So if you guys are interested, go over to Kershaw Knives, check them out. And if you use the code ARM40, you can get 40% off the MSRP price of any of your orders. And again, that's as long as they're not already running a sale. So like I mentioned in the intro, in this video, I have an important update in the ATF pistol brace case. The ATF just submitted their opening briefs and arguments to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, asking for the court to remove the nationwide block against their pistol brace rule. One of the very interesting things about what the ATF is now trying to do and what they're arguing to the Fifth Circuit is that the NFA's tax requirement actually prevents this lawsuit, this challenge, and this type of relief, and that NFA tax claim, that tax requirement that is potentially being circumvented by the Judge O'Connor decision, should essentially invalidate the entire case. Now, as you may recall from prior videos, Judge Reed O'Connor issued a decision on the merits of the case, striking down the ATF pistol brace rule entirely, and he vacated its enforcement nationwide. But now the ATF has appealed that decision up to the Fifth Circuit in the Mock versus Garland case, and they're arguing the NFA's tax requirement means that Judge O'Connor could not vacate this rule nationwide because you are required to pay the NFA tax even under this new rule, and that you cannot be circumventing paying this tax, and this decision would result in that, and therefore this case should be dismissed. And because of this, the ATF is arguing that the Fifth Circuit should remove this nationwide block on the pistol brace rule. Now, you may recall that the ATF recently decided to roll the dice and appeal up to the Fifth Circuit. That happened in the Mock versus Garland case. And there were some other cases like the Brito case and some others that were also pending in front of the Fifth Circuit for preliminary injunction reviews. All of those appeals that were pending already in the Fifth Circuit dealt with preliminary injunctions. The ATF wanted the Fifth Circuit to dismiss the preliminary injunctions that were protecting some of the companies and customers, and then some of the named organizations and their members. But then what ended up happening is the Fifth Circuit decided to moot all of those cases, kick all of those cases, and instead they're only going to review the Mock case because that dealt with a final merits case, a final merits decision, and the nationwide vacature of the pistol brace rule. Originally in Mock, the Fifth Circuit found that plaintiffs were likely to succeed on the merits of their arguments against the ATF that they did in fact violate the APA. They sent the case back down to Judge O'Connor, who then issued a preliminary injunction finding that the ATF did violate the APA because the final rule was not a logical outgrowth from the proposed pistol brace rule. Judge O'Connor then issued a final merits decision in the Mock case, and in that he struck down the rule completely nationwide. So that's what's currently protecting everyone nationwide when it comes to pistol braces. It is this decision by Judge O'Connor striking down the entire rule as a violation of the APA. In his decision, Judge O'Connor stated that, "Here the court declines defendant's invitation to relitigate this issue and once again adopts the majority's well-reasoned conclusion on its own. Consequently, the court finds that the final rule violated the APA's procedural requirements because it was not a logical outgrowth from the proposed rule." Now, that decision was a huge win and currently setting the stage for the Fifth Circuit to review the final merits decision, review that case, and ultimately determine whether or not the ATF overstepped their authority in regulating some firearms with pistol braces on them as actual SBRs, and then requiring them to be registered and that you will have to pay an NFA tax. Now, in response to that new decision, the ATF decided to seek a stay from Judge O'Connor, which ultimately was denied by Judge O'Connor, and then they appealed up to the Fifth Circuit. And at that time, we anticipated that maybe they would also seek a stay from the Fifth Circuit, but the ATF decided to not do that. Again, keep in mind, because of this final merits appeal that is in the Fifth Circuit decided to kick all of the other cases that were pending in front of them that dealt with a similar issue, but were interlocutory issues dealing with preliminary injunctions. Instead, pretty much they said they're going to focus on the main case, a final merits case, a nationwide vacature case, which is the Mock versus Garland case. And now we have the ATF's opening brief to the Fifth Circuit. And again, they're making some very interesting arguments. They are talking about the AIA, the tax requirement, and this is similar to what we've seen happen in some other cases that were in front of the Fifth Circuit, like the Made in Texas suppressor lawsuit. Now, in the ATF's opening brief, they asked for the Fifth Circuit to review three main things. First, whether the plaintiffs are entitled to relief on their logical outgrowth claim. Second, whether the rule is arbitrary and capricious. And third, whether the district court's universal vacature was impermissibly overbroad. The ATF argues in their brief that the district court erred in granting summary judgment to plaintiffs on their claims that the rule failed to comport with the APA's notice and comment provisions and the APA's reasoned decision-making requirements. The ATF argues that proposed rulemaking provided sufficient notice to permit interested parties to comment, although the rule heeded commenters' concerns by declining to adopt the proposed rule's specific proposals. The notice of proposed rulemaking previewed the rule's reliance on objective evidence of intent and the specific probative evidence identified in the rule. The ATF then goes on to argue that the final rule did not violate that test. They argue that the proposed rule's report card system and the themes and objectives that were in the report card system remained in the final rule, and since it was similar enough and that there were these common themes and threads, it was not a violation of the APA's logical outgrowth test. Now, if you don't understand what that debate is there, essentially the notice of proposed rulemaking with the pistol brace rule, it had that report card system where you would look at the characteristics of the firearm with a brace on it. You would add up points, and if it got enough points based on the characteristics like length, weight, certain optics, if you got enough points, well, then the ATF said it was an SBR and you would have to get a tax and you would have to register it. Now, in the final rule, they scrapped the report card system and then they moved to like a 6-factor test. And then they had a more vague kind of catch-all phrase where they said pretty much we will know what an SBR is once we see it. The ATF then goes on to argue in their brief that their rule is not arbitrary and capricious like Judge O'Connor found. The ATF claims that their position has been consistent all along that braced pistols are SBRs, when we all know that that is not true. They have flip-flopped multiple times on their classifications of braced pistols and not being SBRs. They've said multiple times that they're not SBRs, and then suddenly they're saying almost every single braced pistol is in fact an SBR now. Finally, the ATF argues that at the very least, the Fifth Circuit should remand the case back down to Judge O'Connor because they argue he could not issue this universal vacatur of the rule. The ATF also then walks out one of their new arguments, which is one of their new favorite arguments, which is the Tax Anti-Injunction Act, known as the AIA, and they said that this bars this type of relief, which was granted by Judge O'Connor, because it would avoid paying a required tax under the NFA. The ATF stated in their brief that the Tax Anti-Injunction Act, which generally prohibits suits for the purpose of restraining the assessment or collection of any tax, bars the universal vacatur entered by the district court. The NFA establishes a tax on the making and transfer of short-barreled rifles, and the district court's universal vacatur impermissibly interferes with the ATF's chosen method of assessing that tax. So if you've been following this channel for a while, you will know that this is not the first time that the ATF has made this type of AIA NFA tax requirement to try to avoid one of these cases. This is kind of one of the ones that they made first in the Texas suppressor appeal. They made in Texas suppressor lawsuit. They made this argument to try to get the Fifth Circuit to dismiss that case. Now, ultimately, the Fifth Circuit dismissed the case in Texas about suppressors on a different issue about standing. They didn't address the AIA, but the ATF is now trying to use this NFA tax requirement and that you can't avoid paying an NFA tax as a reason for why the Fifth Circuit should reverse what Judge O'Connor said about pistol braces. The ATF claims that nationwide vacatur must be struck down and that you must be required to pay the NFA tax because of the AIA. So they're using the NFA tax claim once again to try to avoid the decision that happened in this case. So very interesting developments in this case. Now we're going to wait to see what happens as a result in response to this argument by the ATF. I don't think that the AIA NFA tax arguments are going to play here. I don't think the Fifth Circuit is going to agree with the ATF on those arguments, but we're going to have to see how this plays out. And if we get any more information, I will let you guys know. So if you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.